Значи, вместо да пия бири на плажа в почивните си дни, гледай с какви работи се занимавам. Oh, he's still here! Welcome to the channel! So how much do pilots actually study? We're going to talk about what manuals the different airline companies are going to give you to study, like the SOP, briefing manuals and others, about the performance, flying technique, navigation. We're going to talk about emergency procedures. Now there are a lot of documents that we as pilots have to work with. So if you stay tuned until the end of this video, I'm going to give you my little secret on how I'm sure that I keep everything on track. So let's start. Okay, so when you're joining a company, you need to perform an OCC course. Now OCC stands for Operator Conversion Course. This is quite normal because when you're joining a new company, you're very likely to face new procedures. The airplane might be the same. Let's say you flew the Airbus A320 in your previous company and now you're flying again Airbus A320. However, you have to know that every operator has different operations and different procedures for his needs. Meaning that, for example, if you do only charter flights, you might be more focused towards the summer type operations. So you can expect to learn the SOP, which we're going to talk a little bit later, emergency procedures, briefings for the type of operations that they do, airplane systems, maybe there might be some different airplane systems. Now as a pilot, to you this will be the most important course you have to focus on, because it's going to be about the system knowledge and the flying itself. However, there are other modules that they want you to have, which you will have to do every time you join a new company.
Wait, what?
Which just don't even get me started. So another very obvious is company introduction. This in itself is you're gathered around with whichever pilots are joining at the same time as you. They put you in a small room, some people from the office come to say hi. You will not remember any of their names because it will be like 40 people. I mean, it depends how big the company is, but anyway, there will be just a lot of people. You're not going to remember anybody's name. So pretty much they want to say welcome to the company in their own way. But other than that, now let's explain what is a ground school. So the idea for the name of ground school originates from the fact that you're not flying and you're staying on the ground and you're studying in a room on the ground. In aviation, we like to simplify things. But in that ground school, there's a lot of subjects that you have to be familiarized with. For example, there's an EFB course. Now, EFB stands for Electronic Flight Bag and pretty much represents all the applications that you're going to use on your personal or company iPad, depending on the company's policy. They will teach you how to use it, how to work with it, in which manuals you can find more information on how to use it, and blah blah blah, stuff like that. But pretty much they will introduce you to the applications that they use, so that when you are in the airplane, it will be very easy for you to navigate through all the apps. But don't worry, once you get into the cockpit, you're gonna mess up everything. Doesn't matter how much you study, you have to practice with the apps on the airplane. So don't worry, with time you're gonna get the hang of it and it's gonna get easier. Another course, for example, would be aviation security, in which they will explain things like forbidden items and some procedures how to handle in case there is an emergency on board, like hijacking and stuff. But my lawyer suggested me not to talk too much about that because, you know. Another course you might expect is the CRM, which is the Crew Resource Management, that they will explain that you're two pilots in the cockpit, work together, use all the resources possible, and by resources I mean not only the captain and the first officer, also the senior flight attendant, all the flight attendants, ground handling personnel, the ramp agent, the bowser, ATC, and so on and so on. Fun fact is that 30-40 years ago there was still CRM, but pretty much nobody was paying attention to it. And all the power was focused on the captain, and the first officer was with like, he didn't have that much power. By power I mean that even if he said something that he might think, the captains usually disregarded him as inexperienced and just went with their gut. But the statistics shows that captains sometimes could be wrong, and at the end of the day it's the first officer who saves the day. Those were some of the courses you might expect. Others would include dangerous good, safety management system, asset or emergency and safety equipment training, slides, doors, firefighting and smoke, fire theory, and there will be more courses once you're joining a company, but don't worry about it because they will give you a schedule and they'll make sure that everything is set and easy for you to understand and follow. Okay, so let's go with the next subject, which is regular updates. Now, by regular updates, I mean that procedures, regulations, they often change. And we as pilots have to stay up to date with the latest changes because, of course, we're expected to know them and we're expected to follow them. And these changes could be issued for many different reasons, but overall the main one is the increasing of traffic of airplanes every year. And except for the COVID or the dark times, which God forbid for coming again in this world, is expected to grow more and more every year. So let me give you a quick example. There's a relatively new document issued a couple of years ago, which name is RECAT EU. So in recent years, Eurocontrol has developed a recategorization, a ICAO wake turbulence categorization for additional separation on departure and arrival. Simply said, during landing, a medium airplane like the A320, if it was landing behind a big airplane like the A340, had to have a separation of at least 5 nautical miles. But now, if we look at the table provided by the RECAT EU, we can see that the new category for the A340 is upper heavy, and the new category for the A320 is upper medium. And if we look at the table, now we can figure out that the minimum additional distance between the two airplanes can be 4 nautical miles. Now, this was just a simple example, but a lot of documents change in the same manner, or new documents are added. And this was example for the pilots flying in Europe, but for American pilots who are flying in the USA, the FAA would issue those changes. Let's move to the next subject. A little bit early in the episode I mentioned the SOP. SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedures. Now, as I mentioned earlier, depending on the airline's operations, they might think that due to safety and for the type of operations that they're having, they might feel that it's appropriate to change or add some extra things in the way you are flying the airplane. Now, the SOP is very important for every airline. And this is because many pilots, especially in Europe, are flying together in the cockpit, but they're from different cultures, from different countries, and have different backgrounds. But thanks to the SOP, both pilots know what to expect from the other pilot, because they have both studied the SOP and they both know what are the actions of the captain and what are the actions of the first officer. In that way, even if we never flew together, me and let's say my captain, it should be very easy for us to fly together because we both know the SOP, on theory. Of course, in practice, people do mistakes from time to time, but we try to keep it professional and we try to stick to the SOP as much as possible. Another very important thing that the SOP focuses on are the standard callouts. Now, some of the callouts come from the manufacturer itself. However, again, the operator could change them a little bit. As an example, let's say when we are 100 feet from our decision altitude to continue the landing or to go around, when we're 100 feet above, one callout could be 100 above. But in another company, it could be plus 100. In a third company, it could be 100 feet to decision. In any case, this is decided by the airline company, but both pilots have to know it. And just as the other regulation, the SOP could change as well. Mama, girl! Okay, let's move to the next subject, which is self-studying. You have to fly an airplane, a really big and complicated airplane. Now, there are some manuals like the FCOM and FCTM, which are written by the manufacturer, and in those documents you can find information about the different airplane systems, as well as the different techniques that are used for flying. But you also have operations manual written by the company. And as a matter of fact, you have 4 of them. You have Operation Manual A, B, C, D, and those manuals include further information regarding the operations of the company. For example, fuel procedures, emergency procedures, navigation procedures, avoiding weather procedures, and so on and so on. And everything is written there for the pilot to study. Lovely. Of course, besides that, you also have the EFB, and for example, in there you have an application with all the charts for the different airports that you need. So when a pilot goes to a new airport, he has to be familiarized with the reference charts for that airport. Now, in the reference charts, it says things like noise abatement procedures, it could be frequency changes procedures. This is very specific for every airport, but it is again the pilot's duty to know what to expect and what is written in those reference pages. So this subject is a little bit different because now we're moving to the flight preparation, which would also include weather and NOTAMs. But although you have to check the weather, the studying part is to know what it means. So on the weather charts, there are a lot of different symbols. And yes, we do not know all of them by heart, but we do have to know where to find each symbol and quickly interpret the information. Where to find the different symbols, what they mean, how could they affect the flight. But let's get back to studying. Another very important things that we have to make sure that we know by heart, and this is by heart, are the emergency procedures. Because on some emergency procedures, you just don't have time to think. It's kind of like the movie with Maverick. Don't think, just do.
Don't think, just do.
But what they don't say in the movie is that you have to know what to do already, and that it should be so deeply encoded in your memory and body and soul that you don't even have to think about it. For example, engine failure at 100 feet just after takeoff. You just have to know what to do and what comes after the other. There's just no time to think. But if you're passengers, don't worry about it. Every 6 months we have simulators, we constantly have trainings, and there are people in the company whose only job is to make sure that we know what we're doing. Okay, so now it's time for the secret tip that I promised you in the beginning of the video. Now, as you can see by yourself, there are a lot of documents, manuals that we as pilots have to know. And some of the information we have to be able to find really quickly. And my personal tip for you is organize. Now, in the beginning of my aviation career, I have to be honest. Whichever manuals and books I had, I just put them in one folder. Some I put in other folders. And now, because I have to find something very specific in, let's say, 40 different documents, can you imagine how hard it is to find it? I remember it used to take me so much time.
Yo, you about done?
So I'm gonna be honest with you, this is the best tip I can give you. Organize everything. Organize your manuals, organize your documents, organize your procedures, and keep training. For example, where can I find a rapid depressurization procedure? Where can I find a predetermined point procedure? Try to find that information in a different document and check how much time it takes you to get there. Because remember, there is so much information that it is impossible for us to memorize all of it. And the chances of making a mistake by trying to memorize it and get it out of your brain is very high. But if you know in which document to find it, you can quickly navigate to it, and if everything is properly organized, I guarantee you that you'll be really fast in navigating and finding the specific information you need, which will save you time, definitely nerves, and in some cases maybe a little bit of embarrassment. Because you are an airline pilot. Can you imagine if you cannot find some of the procedures that you have to know? If I have to compare it to other professions, the first one that comes to my mind is a doctor.
A little busy here.
Because doctors study all the time until they die. I'm joking, but you do realize that people fly on airplanes and they give us their trust that we will safely fly them from point A to point B for their vacation or going to their loved ones or whatever it might be the case, but it's our responsibility to make sure that everything is safe. And because flying is complicated, with all those procedures, regulations, we have to study all the time, we have to stay up to date. Just remember that nobody is born with the knowledge in his head. It takes time, dedication, and a lot of hard work. But just remember that if you try to be the best student in the room, it's very possible that you can be, and nobody can take that away from you. And lastly, you might think, well, isn't it boring to study so much? Well, this is aviation, this is what we love to do. I mean, in general, this is the flying part that we love to do, not the studying. But we do realize that they're connected. And you can't fly an airplane without knowing how to fly it. That being said, yes, sometimes it is boring. So my advice to you would be, when this happens, just take a few days off, don't touch the aviation books for a couple of days, let your brain recover, and just do the things that you love to do. And then trust me, in a couple of days of relaxation, you will have new fresh strengths and it will be much more interesting to you to study again. So Sky Lovers, that was my time for today. I hope that now you realize how much studying there is behind being an airline pilot. And now I really hope that you understand how annoying it is when someone says, oh, the pilots just engage the autopilot and that's all they're doing. But that's actually a good question. What do pilots actually do in the cockpit? And how often do they use the autopilot? What happens if the autopilot doesn't work? Yeah, you already guessed it, you know where this is going. If you want to learn more about the subject of pilots and autopilots, click this video right here. Before I finish this video, I just want to say that those were some of the things we have to study. And there are many more, don't get me wrong. But if I have to do a full video about it, it's not going to be 10 minutes. This is really annoying, so I'm going to say this really quickly. If you like this video, you can share, subscribe, comment, or hit the notification bell. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.